Okay. All right, we're live. So we're just going to get started here. I guess that Carrie, I'm interested to know what you've come up with. I'm wondering if you could start by reminding us what your why is and you think your obstacles might be as it pertains to measuring outcomes. And then I'm interested to hear what your thought process is about which outcomes you want to measure.
Sure. Well, my why was twofold, both so that we can utilize what we're doing with outcomes to get more funding and keep the funding that we do have. But then secondly, I have some really specific goals that we are working on, three main goals. One that we've been working on for a number of years, healthy living, and then enjoying reading as well as respecting others that we'll be working on this summer. And so the why there is also to make sure that what we're trying to do is happening at camp with the outcomes. Time was the major roadblock, time and knowledge, I think, and the scariness of not quite knowing where to start.
Yeah.
I did purchase the ACA outcomes tools last year, and I threw a couple questions on the evaluation just because I had purchased it, and those outcomes are pretty general. But I'd really like to have some outcomes tied to the goals that we have, although I don't mind measuring the general ones as well because, you know, they work too for funders.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. So where are you with the outcomes? Have you identified specific ones?
No. The ACA resources don't really have specific ones that match up to or align to the goals that I have set. So right now I'm stuck in, and this is where I was at the, last summer too when I kind of started it, stuck in, okay, what do I do?
Right.
These don't match what I want to measure, but do I use them anyway? And yeah, so no, this is where I am, stuck.
Okay, great. Well, this is perfect. Then this is like a first sort of test case for us. Okay, so ideally, name an outcome that you would like to measure if the instrument existed and we could point you in the right direction.
So one of our goals that we've been working on for a while is healthy living, and so that when kids come to camp, they will be exposed to and learn about different healthy living skills around nutrition, physical activity, mental, like stress reduction sort of things that we do at camp. And so we have a number of activities that we do around that, and I would like to measure to see that after 2 weeks the kids are going home feeling like they've learned and will want to continue some of these healthy living habits that we've started here at camp.
Okay. All right. Carlin, Larry, any thoughts on Carrie's obstacle here?
I only heard about half because I was fiddling with the cabling here and getting myself onto Ethernet as opposed to Wi-Fi, which stopped the freezing. So,
on the plus side, though, Larry, your picture is very crisp. You look really wonderful, I have to tell you.
Well, nothing like a T1 line here. And we're not wearing tank tops here in England. That's for sure. We had 5 inches of snow on 2 days ago.
Wow.
And it's supposed to have some more tomorrow morning. So, but I think, picking out the questions is you got a whole big block of stuff, and you look through there, and okay, so which ones are the ones I want, and that's a learning curve, and it's always hard to overcome that hump.
Carrie, I guess I wonder. It seems like there's 2 ways to go with the healthy living thing. I think one is attitudes and sort of what the kids think, their impressions, their aspirations, what they think their future holds, their values, that kind of thing. And then I think the other one is what they do. And you mentioned habits. What are healthy habits? and I don't know what the answer is as it pertains to attitudes versus actions. But I do, though. I wonder. I wonder this about with my own camp. How much, how realistic is it that you would instill a habit in a child after 2 weeks that they could then sustain at home? What do you have thoughts on that? Do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely I do think about that, and I think 2 weeks probably is not enough time. However, we do have a pretty high return rate. And I think if you're going to create any habit within 2 weeks, doing that at camp is probably more possible than any place else. When you kind of live and breathe that habit and then have those staff role models showing you that habit. Like if it could happen anywhere in 2 weeks, it could happen at camp. But I do think then the return campers and just like this being a part of what we do lends itself to potentially having the ability to really make a difference in this area. If I didn't think that, I wouldn't be doing it.
How on board are your parents? What or how what's the possibility that your parents could be part of the solution in that Johnny comes home and is interested in doing continuing with this new habit that he discovered at camp and really likes. How active are your parents in, or what's their relationship with you like?
From I think their families and parents are probably part of the reason that they have some of the negative habits that they do have. So it's almost as if they go home and there is more potential in more cases for them to not have any support to continue these habits. In fact, to go back to kind of the unhealthy habits that they maybe had before. And that's not to say, though, that I don't think there are some parents and some families who are very supportive of what we're trying to do.
I'm thinking that if you have them for 2 weeks, that you really need to, you can't change their lifestyle entirely, but if you had developed in that 2 weeks one more healthy goal, one thing they could do, then they would be more likely to stick with it. And then when you get them back next year, you can identify one more. It's not the ideal way of establishing healthy living, but it's something that might have a chance of working, where if you had 3 or 4 goals at once and 3 or 4 changes at once, unless you had a chance, you had them for 7 weeks the way we do, and have a chance to maybe change some things, it would be too hard to do.
You might have mentioned this when you first described it, but do you include attitudes and just general, the way kids think about healthy living in, or are you thinking of including just attitudes in the way you do it? Because that might be something that's easier to do in 2 weeks as opposed to creating a new physical habit, like a new habit where they literally go home and do whatever, do whatever physical thing, but they could really get a new attitude that's more cemented in their mind in 2 weeks.
Definitely, and yeah, that's kind of the first goal, that these healthy habits or healthy choices that we're asking the kids to make, we want to be enjoyable and fun and natural for them. So for instance, getting more physical activity, we make that fun. We do an hour play 60, we do a bunch of different activities, we all get involved, everybody does it, they have choices. And so it's not necessarily that I want them to go home and exercise for an hour every day, but I do want them to go home and think about, hey, getting out and exercising and doing these different things is fun and I enjoy that, and if I can, I would do it. Same thing with food. It's not necessarily that I want them to go home and eat fresh fruits and vegetables and all of those sorts of things and lower their salt. That would all be great, but it's, hey, trying new foods is fun. So it maybe is more about the attitudes versus the actual habits themselves.
What's interesting about what Larry said, just to make to continue the case for habits, is that let's say you did, for simplicity's sake, in a way, take the one thing idea, and you have a menu of things that your kids could choose from, all of which you're working on, but they get to choose one. So the one that I'm going to do, give me an example of a habit that one child might take with him.
Exercising on a regular basis.
Exercising on a regular basis. Okay. So I think the exciting thing for me about that is that then if you were able to do the follow-up work, and so you follow up with the families in November or February or even when camp starts a year later, is that you can ask them with pretty high accuracy, and I bet a researcher would corroborate this. How many times, Johnny, have you exercised in the past week or in the past 4 weeks? And the parents could help with that too and say, yeah, it's like 4 times or whatever. And those results, I bet, would be relatively easy to ascertain, as opposed to something like resilience or something, which is like would be really difficult for a lay person to assess without an instrument. Having said this, I feel certain that there are healthy living instruments out there, and so what I'm going to do after our call is run around and look for them and consult with other with our researchers and see if they have suggestions. So I think that's fantastic. I think that would be great, and it doesn't seem like a tall order to me at all. It seems simple and beautiful in a way.
Yeah, I love the idea of letting the kids choose maybe the goal that they want to work on. We are very intentional about this at camp, so we have all of the activity, we have all of the materials, we have all of this in place. And so if kids, I mean, it would just be so easy to let the kids choose a goal. I mean, and then they get work around goal setting as well.
Right, and the goal setting. I mean, goal setting is something that we have talked about a lot at Longacre, but never really followed up on. And as I look at the research on goal setting, it's I feel like an idiot. And this summer we're going to have them write it down and talk about it. And some kids are going to hit them, and some kids are going to fail. And who cares? It's just the process of setting those goals and having just experiencing what it's like to keep a goal in mind. Something that can be measured. I'm right there with you. I think it's very exciting, and whether they hold on to it or not, it's sort of it's almost beside the point. It's that you're trying to instill a mindset or a process.
I'm thinking of the last weekend at the ACA New England meeting, and I'd heard this idea before, but I was hoped to remember it, and it makes some work for you, but if they picked one from a choice, so it's theirs, and then write a note to yourself that I'm going to send you in November or December, and then do it. And so write a letter to yourself, and then you can follow up just by forwarding the email or slapping the envelope in the mail or something, just as a reminder or a prompt, and they know it's going to come. I don't know, maybe that provided a little incentive, but I was reminded of that technique last weekend as different speakers were talking about issues like this.
Yeah, we've utilized that with our middle schoolers and high schoolers. Well, they'll write something to themselves during camp, and we hopefully usually get around to sending it to them after camp, or maybe they write it at the beginning of camp and open it at the end. And we've used it for our staff. We have them write a letter during orientation, and then when it's August and 105 degrees every day, and they're getting a little tired, we have them open those up so they can get a little more energy, and it's nice to kind of remind them of the goals they set at the beginning of the summer. It really does make a difference.
That's a great idea, Larry. Another thing I was thinking, Carrie, was that you could also, let's say you do a follow-up thing and you're trying to assess whether how effective the intervention was. I think another one of the things you could ask is somehow figure out in a way that is tactful and respectful is how engaged the parents were in the goal setting, because I wonder, I hypothesize that parents who say or were more actively engaged in helping their kids meet their goals. I mean, as a 8-year-old, wouldn't it be easier to hit your goals if your parents are sort of helping? So and then you could sort of indicate through your outcomes that here are our kids and here are the ones who are being successful, and as it turns out that a moderate influence, moderate sort of whatever with parents makes a big difference, and that I think could even something simple like that could motivate a parent to be on your team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
What if you had them not only write a letter to themselves, but write a note to their parents, hey, mom and dad, or mom or dad or grandma, depending. You know, here's the goal I set for myself at camp. Can you help me do this?
That's an awesome idea. And actually, I mean, sending that letter home to the parents so they get it before the child gets home, so they have something to talk to them about once they arrive home. And how did you do at camp? And yeah, I love that idea.
Besides, that makes you guys look like geniuses.
All right. Carrie, how are you feeling?
Excited.
Okay.
I think
great.
there's some pretty actionable items here, and it almost changes a little bit in the direction or things that I would measure. So yeah, I'm excited. I think there's some very doable things here.
Okay, great. So I'll after the call look for instruments, and I'll follow up with you about what I find, and if I don't find anything, why I'm not finding anything.
Cool.
Anything else you want to say?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, all of you.
All right. So, Carlin, can you remind us of why you want to do this, and what you think the obstacles are for you, and then where your thought process is around specific outcomes?
Yeah, we want to do this because we want summer camp to be kind of a staple, not only in summer recreation industry, but also in the education industry. You know, have parents and educators and researchers see camp as something that's really vital and really practical and really useful for youth development, sort of in the same way we see pre-K as really useful. You know, we know not everyone has the chance to go to pre-K, but we know it's very valuable, and it's something that we want everyone to have the chance to do. We kind of want to make summer camp feel like that, and so that's why we want to have the outcomes, to show people the numbers, to show people all the stories that we know are true. We just have to have some proof for it. So, you know, that first question, the first or second question in the email, you know, do we want to measure what we do well, or do we want to measure what we don't do as well to cover our weaknesses? I think we would want to start by measuring what we do really well to get it out there, and then we can start building on things that we don't do as well. So the biggest challenge, I think, for us is simply the logistics of getting it done during camp. I think, you know, our team, we always have a great team, we're always very focused, but we're a little resistant to change, especially in our very, very busy schedules. So I'm just trying to imagine at what point we would sit down and get all the campers to answer questions. That's, you know, assuming we even have the questions and the right things to ask to begin with, but really getting that settled and getting it done is the biggest challenge.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I have to say I love your pre-K analogy. I thought that is really poignant. So I really like that. Interestingly, a gentleman Steve has talked about the owner of Carlin's Camp, is a gentleman at UT named David Yeager. And,
we've worked with him.
This is a guy who has worked with you guys. You are very blessed to have this connection. And anyway, he's a hotshot researcher, and was on the radio the other day on one of my a public radio show I really like. And he was on there with a bunch of other folks, 3 other people, and they were talking about character education in schools and how controversial it kind of is. At any rate, the entire conversation was K-12 oriented. There was nothing in there about camp or about any other out-of-school time. It was all K-12, and so I guess I'm excited at your reasoning, and I feel right there with you. So, what outcomes are you thinking about? What you guys do well is I understand that. what are you thinking? Do you have anything coming to mind?
Yeah, we've taken an active role in the partnership for the 21st Century Skills. We're working on that with our staff, incorporating it with our campers, with our high school leadership program. So picking out a few of those would probably be the best place to start. We talk a lot about resilience, grit, transfer of grit, and all that the whole partnership for 21st Century, the communication. So we'd have to pick one or pick a few. And I think we would settle on the ones that tend to lead to success in college and the workplace, because that's something great to show parents that we can lead to. And I think the ones that best predict those are resilience and communication, or something along those lines. But yeah, we would pick a few to focus on from within the P21 framework.
Okay, great. Questions for Carlin?
Carlin, do you do evaluations, like end of the session evaluations with your campers already?
What we do, which is what I started thinking about where we could incorporate it, is we do camper surveys, which we do at the end of, I think, the first and second week, but not always the third week, as a way to touch base, to say, hey, how's it going in the cabin? Who are your best friends? What's your favorite activity? And so if there is something going on, they can talk to one of us. It sort of makes us aware of issues. But we don't do one, I believe, at the end of every session. We use those surveys primarily to address issues when they're there, currently in the term. So it could be possible to add something, try to do a third day, but those days are super hectic and crazy. We do them after lunch and bribe them with extra breadsticks. So we could add another one of those days at the end of camp as kind of a wrap-up if we had the right measures. And then it's a matter of keeping track of it through the off season, because I actually won't be here next year. I'm taking a year off to live abroad, but making sure we have someone there to keep track of everything and actually go through and analyze it between all the other stuff we do in the fall. So
go ahead, Larry.
Oh, I'm just going to ask, what percentage returners year to year do you have? You may have
we have about 70 to 80% normal retention, and that's, I think second years and above, it's 50-50, around 50-50 for first year campers. So that's one of the things we're working hard on, is to try and get higher retention of that first year, because once they come back the second year, they're usually in for a long time.
I'm wondering if part of the key to your outcomes might not be in that very first little survey you give them, ask them, how come you came back? And maybe in a more structured way. And that might suggest to you some questions to ask them later on.
Yeah.
That would help with outcomes. I don't know. I just, again, top of my head, just idealistic to what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it would also be interesting whether there's any correlation between the kids who are improving their communication skills or their resilience or whatever the outcomes that you pick over the summer, whether there's any correlation between the kids who are making progress and the return rate.
Yeah, seeing if returners, that might be self-selecting though. I mean, if the reason, it'd be hard to do causation, but it'd be an interesting correlation.
The other thing maybe to consider, and I don't know how good of a return rate you would get, but it sounds like your time at camp is booked. Well, what about doing an online survey after the campers get home, sending that out, within a short amount of time, and you're not going to get 100% as you do when you have a captive audience and breadsticks, but.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I bet we do that with parent surveys, and we could also send one for a lot of the campers.
It would be, now here's the academic in me talking. It would be fascinating to compare the parent ones to the camper. It would just what a really interesting study that would make. Never mind, that's not our job, but that's still.
Yeah, well, the one we send to parents, the one we send to parents is more, what went really well at your experience at Camp Champions, what could we do to improve, and they say things like, make there less of a line on opening day or XYZ. But if we made it, which we would love to, but if we did another one, we could include things. Did you see this kind of improvement in your child? But then also ask the child, do you feel like you've improved in this area? Or however we would phrase the questions. And yeah, that would be really interesting to compare the parent to the child's response.
Larry, maybe I'm stupid, but what can you just be specific, explain what it is that would be so interesting about that? Why you said maybe it's the academic in me. I don't quite get it.
It would be kind of a comparison of the parents. I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. The perception of what happened to Junior versus Junior's perception of what happened or changed with Junior.
And,
Do they match?
And they might dovetail and they might not.
Yeah. In other words, in a sense, you're asking the parents what was important about this experience, and then you're asking Junior what was important about this experience. And my gut is that you're likely to get very different answers. And that to me would be kind of fascinating. Or maybe you'd get the same one. That would be interesting too.
Huh. Yeah.
That's, that's academic research. And I'm not sure if you'd even have to run that one by this institutional
review board.
What review board?
RTB.
I mean, here at school, I leave that to that's why I'm a geologist. Everything I deal with has been dead for 100 million years. So.
All right. Good. So it sounds, Carlin, like your challenge is you have a small group of outcomes that you could choose from, and it's identifying the ones that would make the most sense for you out of that small group. Is that right?
That, and then just the logistics of executing it. But we did come up with some good ideas to address that.
Okay, great. Anything else you want to share?
That's mostly everything. Just, I'm still hesitant thinking of if it'll happen this summer, but I know it's something that we want to happen eventually for sure. So I'm glad to be involved.
All right, Larry, can you share with us your why and the obstacles that you face, and then what you're thinking about outcomes?
Okay, my why, and it was again focused on our clinic for young adults, was I'd really like to have something that I could put out there, both to get more broader participation from other camps, something I could put out there to help develop programs elsewhere, something that I could, and I don't need any justification at PEMI, but wave at my colleagues here at the university and say, hey, and they want numbers and they don't want anecdotes, and let me share with you an anecdote, however. 2 nights ago after my Wednesday night class, so at 10:30 I sat down in my office just to take a quick look, and there was an email from a former grad student who had been to the clinic, and she's now director of the Children's Zoo at the Dallas Zoo, and in charge of the educational programs, and she was talking about how much those 5.5 days in New Hampshire had meant to her and how it changed her whole career path. Well, that's a lovely thing to get, but how many of those am I going to share, and can I really share that anyway? I'd have to ask permission. I'm sure she'd be willing to, but still, that's one. And so the real issue here is, first of all, we're dealing with a lot of people who aren't ours. It was the secondary issue that really their directors sent them to us. I mean, if we put them in there, or they're my students here, I know, but we have a lot of people who come from other camps. They're not ours. And so how do we evaluate the secondary, how well they taught nature at their camps later? So I'm a step away. That was the real kind of issue and holdback for for what we might have outcomes. And the outcome question is, are we getting kids interested in nature and outdoors and looking at observing around them elsewhere besides at PEMI or here at the University of New Haven? Tough one.
Yeah, it is. Any thoughts or questions for Larry?
Remind me how old your campers, your participants are. Are they high school?
8 to 25 and sometimes older, but
Okay.
18 to 25, not 8.
Yeah.
18 to 25.
Yeah,
Occasionally.
so that at least gets rid of the issue of it, working with children and parental consent and any of that you might run into.
No, they're all adults. Legally.
Right. Yeah, some of us still don't really feel like adults, so thank you for that. Larry, it's sort of back to a similar question we were having with Carrie. You think it sounds like attitudes is a pretty good barometer of whether you've been successful with a child. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, with a child, I think so. Whether our graduates, if I'll call them that, are successful. And the ones who put the PEMI I can see.
No, I'm with you. But I mean, forget what's possible. I think that what's possible is really constricting and sort of makes you think that, well, I can't do this. But it sounds like ultimately you're hoping to influence the behaviors of the kids that your students are teaching.
That's what I want. If nothing else, I want those kids to go outside and see. Just maybe not even know what they're seeing, but just look.
Well, and be interested in looking and be curious or think that being in nature is fun or something like that.
Yes, all of those things.
Imagine that.
Imagine that.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, there's this scale that that the ACA has called Affinity for Nature, and there's a short version and a long version, and the long version's 10 questions, short version's 5 questions or 6 or something like that. One of the things I'm thinking is that the deal you set with your directors who are sending these students to you is say, here's the deal. We got to know whether we're doing this thing and we're doing well here, and so we'll educate your person. We're doing this at cost or whatever, and we're happy to do it, but we need to know whether we're doing well. And the deal is you got to give this survey to some subsection of your kids, or you say like 30 kids, or you set a number, and then that's your fee.
Yeah, I can't give up the whole 385 because.
No, I don't think you should. I don't think that you should. But I think that it doesn't seem like an unreasonable request for somebody who's giving like this very extensive training, to want to know if they're doing well. I mean, you're in a pickle.
Yeah, no.
The other thing, though, is...
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that survey is going to help those programs as well. They can use that outcome info, too, assuming it's positive, and then it comes back to you as well.
No,
it's kind of a win-win.
It's a good idea, and you're absolutely right. They can use that information also, which is fine with us. There's somebody at ACA New England said there's plenty of kids and not so many camps, and so we're not really need to compete with each other.
Right. Okay. So I like that. Why? Yeah. Okay. Okay. I guess I think that that might be. Do you have lots of return directors, or are they random? Or is
Yes,
it,
we have a lot. Um, some we see every year, and they're the ones whose staff turns over every year. I mean, I'm thinking of one camp. They send us somebody every single year, and they have about a 5% return rate of their staff. And others that send us somebody every 2 or 3 years, and they're keeping the person, sticking with them until they probably have to go out to real life, with all of us have avoided. Uh, and and so part of what I'm trying to do is I'd sure like to see more camps participate because I think we can help them.
how good are you at asking for stuff? How what's the is it hard for you to talk to those directors and say I need you to do these surveys for me?
I think it would be tough for the new ones, but for the guys who've been with us for years and years, it would. So there's 6 or 7 of those. It would be easy, and they'd be glad to do it. Because it would help them. I'm not sure I would ask somebody who's. I got one who's sending us somebody for the very first time this year. I'd probably leave them alone.
Right. Well, it's definitely a place to start, and I don't know what the
That's a
number is,
great
20
idea.
or 30 or whatever per client, and then you multiply that by 5 or 6, you got 100, and then you've got some data, and for all you know, there could be really interesting different results, and you could see in person 1, 2, and 3. The kids showed real gains in their affinity for nature, and in person 4 and 5 there were sort of small gains, and maybe you could have predicted that based on the students' performance up at PEMI.
Yeah. Now this is good.
And who knows? I mean, then you're sort of similar to Carrie as well. I think that then I envision like a couple years down the road, then you're asking like, well, how was your support from your administrator, your assistant director, or your director? And so there may be a correlation between what kind of support that person is receiving, either social support or I don't know. But I mean, I think that if there's real enthusiasm for it at the camp, I don't know. I don't think it's so impossible, Larry. I think it's
No, I'm agreeing with you. This is a very good path to look into, and it may get us somewhere, which would
okay,
be
cool.
really useful.
Any other comments or questions for Larry? All right. One thing I want to say, I have to apologize to you guys. We build this thing as something where there would be a researcher and a camp with experience, et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, just because of scheduling, I haven't been able to. Been turned down every time after we set the time for this. So I apologize for that. I appreciate you guys being the sort of guinea pigs. Because this is a big help to us, and the CARE meeting, the Committee for the Advancement of Research and Evaluation, is happening right now in Indianapolis, and they're talking about us and the work that we're doing, raise the bar, and actually this group specifically. So there's a lot of enthusiasm around this. Unfortunately, it's not just actually happening during the meeting. So I apologize for that, and I appreciate your patience.
Thank you for putting it all together.
Thank you.
Oh, well, gosh. So that's it. I think we're good to go. We did it in 40 minutes this time, which is fantastic. We'll send out the doodle for the next meeting. I'll see where Maria's at and send her the link and everything like that. And I have some homework for Carrie and Larry. Although Carlin, it doesn't seem like I have homework for you.
Right. I'm still going to be thinking about it, but.
Okay. Yeah. If there's anything that I can do, by all means, let me know. I'm happy to help out in any way that I can. But unless you guys have anything else, I think we're good to go.
I'll just mention that looking ahead in 3 weeks, we have our PEMI Spring Summit meeting, which I guess some people would call retreat, but where all the head honchos get together in a house in Gloucester, Massachusetts, and discuss the upcoming season, so I won't be available.
So that's the final week in April, or the first week
the
in May?
final week in April. We do it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So.
Okay, great. All right. Well, guys, have a great weekend. Thanks so much for doing this, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Sounds
you.
good. Thank you.
Bye, Carrie. Bye, Carlin. Bye, Larry.
Bye.